Welcome to the mystery. Maybe you do not know. I am Maria. Wish you a good day. One of the research that causes the headache is the time gap, when almost disappearances disappear suddenly as it happened yesterday. The most mysterious disappearances in the world. Passengers on the Titanic appeared after nearly 80 years. On April 14, 1912, the Titanic's first ship suffered a collision, killing 1,500 people. But in the mid-1990s and early 1991, the two missing persons and the Titanic were found nearly 80 years ago in the area near the icebergs of the North Atlantic Ocean. On September 24, 1990, the Voyager was traveling over the North Atlantic. Captain Carl suddenly discovers a shadow from the cliff. Through the telescope, he saw a woman using her hand to signal for help. This woman, dressed in British aristocracy in the early 20th century, was soaking wet and shivering. When she was rescued aboard, answering her question, she said, "My name is Winnie Kate, 29, a passenger on the Titanic. When the ship was wrecked, a big wave hit me on the iceberg, so fortunately they saved me." Hearing that answer, everyone felt very strange and they thought that maybe due to high fever, this girl was talking nonsense. Kate was taken to hospital for tests. Her health is not a problem, but she is too scared to get lost for days. Nerves also do not show signs of confusion. Blood tests, hair tests, show that she is about 30 years old. So there is an unbelievable problem coming to business. From 1912 to now, spent nearly 80 years that Kate is not aging at all? Verified. Compared with the list of passengers on the Titanic, it was found that all contents match what Kate said. While everyone is arguing, the second incident occurs. On August 9, 1991, an oceanographic survey team, while surveying in the southwestern region about 387 kilometers north of the icebergs of the Atlantic Ocean, discovered and saved a 60-year-old man. He was dressed in a white suit, quite tidy, shaking a cigarette. No one could have thought it was Captain Titan of Titanic. The famous oceanographer Dr. Marwin Idleman, after rescuing Smith, told the press that there could not be any more astounding events. This man could not be a scammer. He was actually the captain of the Titanic, who had finally sank into the sea with the ship. More difficult to believe, Smith is now 140 years old, but in fact only a 60-year-old man. When saved, he insisted that the day was September 15, 1912. After being rescued, he was taken to the Oslo Mental Hospital, Norway, for treatment. Psychologist J.L. Hallant conducted a series of experiments and Smith was completely normal. On September 18, 1991, in a brief statement, Hallant asserted that the exact survivor was Captain Smith because fingerprint matching had shown that the work should be clearly explained. Some European and American seafarers say Captain Smith and passenger Kate have fallen into the phenomenon of disappearance, replaying through time. 800 British troops missing in the clouds. On the 21st of August 1915, more than 800 soldiers of the Norfolk 5th Regiment of the British Army were ordered to maneuver into a high mountain in the Dardanelles region of Turkey. According to witnesses' testimony, a large cloud flew down and covered the troop, then entering the valley. The higher the troops, the farther into the clouds. When the last one was gone, the clouds had risen high and disappeared, and no one was seen walking out of the cloud. Each treetop, bushes on the top of the mountain can be seen clearly, but an army of more than 800 people has disappeared completely. At that time, 22 New Zealand soldiers were practicing the same battle with the army, on a small hill about 600 meters away. They witnessed the mysterious scene on their own. There is a theory that the entire army has been taken prisoner by the Turkish task force. However, after the war, Turkey insisted that they had never seen this army. 800 missing soldiers were not included in the list of dead British soldiers and not on the list of prisoners of war given by Turkey after the end of the war. In China, in 1945, a train carrying hundreds of passengers from Guangdong to Shanghai disappeared from its final destination, leaving no trace. Missing plane 35 years back. The American Douglas suddenly appeared in Venezuela after 35 years. On September 9, 1990, a Venezuelan airport checkpoint discovered a Douglas, 1930s, suddenly flying through. When the airport staff connected with them, "This is Venezuela, where are you from?" "Oh my goodness, we're 914 Pan American Airways from New York to Florida, how about flying?" When verifying the flight logs from the US, everyone was alarmed that all crew and 50 passengers were believed to have died in Flight 914 on the 2nd of June 1955. The strange thing is that they look exactly the same as when they are missing, while the family and children are old. When police and U.S. scientists investigated their identity cards and flight attendants, they were surprised to see all the details match 100%. A decade long. According to the U.S. Navy records, during the World War II Pacific Campaign, the U.S. Navy's Indianapolis was sunk by Japanese submarines. At that time, the U.S. Navy received the emergency signals of 25 soldiers and officers leaving the warship by rescue boat. But after many searches, 25 other soldiers could not be found. Finally, the U.S. military has declared that they have disappeared. But on July 1, 1991, a Philippine fishing fleet on Subic, south of the Philippine Islands, suddenly found a lifeboat. On the boat were 25 soldiers in panic, although the body is still strong. This discovery surprised the U.S. military. The most obscure thing was that the Indiana Barlovers were sunk in 1945, and until 1991 people saw them, but they were unchanged from the past, not even beard and hair, nor long more at all. 25 people insisted they only float on the sea one day and night. 46 years is equivalent to one day. What happened? Astronomers, Dr. Samasajian said, are likely to have fallen into the gap of time, decades later to reappear and completely unknown at what point in time. In 1954, during a balloon competition, the balloon of Harry Rosen and Derek Noyden suddenly disappeared. After years of searching, they still cannot find the body of the crashed balloon. Strangely, in 1990, at another balloon competition in Cuba, the missing balloon 36 years ago suddenly appeared where it was lost in 1954 to thousands of eye-popping bears. At that time, the Cubans claimed that this was a secret weapon of the United States, so that the plane shot down the balloon, while Rosen and Derek were taken to a military base. Here, they claim that during the 1954 balloon competition in Bodorego, Saint Juan, they were suddenly agitated in the brain, with severe pain in the body as if there was an electrical current flowing through the body. Everything around from the sky to the sea turns into a red color. The next thing they felt was an attacking fighter plane. They did not know that only in that red moment that time has passed 36 years. After 48 years, the coffee is still hot. In 1985, in a swamp in the jungle of New Guinea, it was discovered that a twin-engine jet had been missing for nearly half a century. What surprised people is that although missing nearly 48 years, but the aircraft is still new. From the mark to the paint is still shiny, the plane has no scratches, the door just opened, it is right, no signs of rust. It is harder to believe in the airplane bay that no one is alive or dead. But in paper airplanes, cigarette butts and newspapers, the publication date of the third Sunday of January 1937 has not yet gone yellow. It seems that there are still new people in the plane. In an ashtray, a cigarette package was put in place in the 1930s, but at the time of World War II production stopped. In addition, the coffee kept in the jar is still warm and has the same taste, all that makes the staff to make hairstyles. The military has sent people to investigate but cannot explain the strange things. Just know this is a civil aircraft took off from Manila, Philippines to China in 1937. According to records, similar events also occurred in the 1960s. A U.S. bomber vanished on April 4, 1946. The U.S. Air Force mobilizes search forces for 500 kilometers of airspace where it is missing, but with no results. According to the analysis of machinery, it seemed that it landed just that afternoon and there was no trace of a plane missing 48 years. The views of scholars. Some say that the time gap is actually the antimatter world that exists in the universe. They rely on Einstein's total physical energy formula, whereby the total energy of matter has two primary and secondary values. So when the secondary value appears, how do we do it? How is his realization? Some scholars have made it into connection with the antimatter world. Now, we know less than half of the universe we live in, the realm of the physical world, and the other half is a system made up of antimatter. These two parts come together under the interaction of gravity. When approaching to a certain extent, the shattering effect of the material and antimatter world creates a tremendous source of energy, creating a pressure that separates the two systems. Accordingly, it can be seen that disappearance is a phenomenon that arises when two systems of matter and antimatter reach the highest level, generating energy that creates the pressure of separation. When the break phenomenon ends, the gravitational field returns to its original state, the phenomenon of repulsion occurs. In the quarrel between scientists, many other theories have been proposed. One of them is the time-stand theory. The material world, after entering the gap of time, is missing, and from there comes out to be reenacted. Thus, time and space floors are not the same system, and the time in the floor is relatively static. So even if there are missing 5 years or decades, people will not change from the beginning. The second hypothesis is the reverse time theory, which assumes that time in time gap is reversed from normal. The missing person is likely to return to the past. However, when the time goes back again, the person is returned to the moment they are missing, resulting in the phenomenon of miraculous reproduction. In the third theory of closing time, the gap of time is the phenomenon of objective existence in the material world, neither visible nor palpable. For the physical world in which man exists, it has just closed and opened. Sometimes when it opens once, there will be missing phenomenon, open again, the missing person reappear. In the immediate future, around the issue of gap of time still have many different opinions. There is not a theory that is convincing because it does not produce authentic evidence. The phenomenon of missing, reenacted remains a mystery awaiting human discovery.